incoming board member for next year. And what we do is we produce a journal from the South Texas Law Review. It's the South Texas Law Journal. And this is really one of the primary ways that legal scholarship gets accomplished. So we get articles from professors, like Professor Blackman, who's been published with us, and judges and just other scholars in the legal field who have interesting and current things to say. And so that's what it is. Benefits of being in law review. I know some of you, I'm sure, have goals of being in big law or getting judicial clerkships, and it really is almost a prerequisite for those positions. And then for the rest of the spectrum, it really sets you apart. When employers are looking at a stack of resumes and you have law review member or law review board member on your resume, it really tells them that you work hard, you can manage your time, you have good grades, you know the blue book. I mean, it just says a host of things about you that are only positive. And so the way you get on law review is you do a write-on packet. And so we assign a topic. Last year it had to do with the right to film the police when you're being interrogated or arrested. And so it's usually something pretty current, it's something interesting, so you write a little kind of predictive case note is what we call it about that, and so you just kind of analyze the different circuits or states and say, this is how I think this is going to turn out. And then we also have an editing exercise where it's like 3 pages, 15 footnotes, and your goal is just to make it as perfect as possible the way articles come out of the process after they've gone through the law review board. And so we have an information session on April the 16th. It's from 12:30 to 2. I know our editor-in-chief mentioned you guys have classes either right before that or kind of heading into that. So if you're late, it's okay. If you have to leave early, it's okay. There's going to be lunch. You can still get the handout. You can get I think last year was pizza. I'm not sure what they're going to have. And my last thing is we really want to encourage people. Law review has a 3.25 GPA requirement, but if you're on the cusp, like if you're close, if you're just above or you're just below, we really encourage you to apply anyway. We do a joint application with Currents, which is another journal. They do international business kind of articles here, and their GPA requirement is different, but they'll be there too to answer questions. So it's worth doing the write-on. It's to both journals, so come to the session, hear about it, hear about the benefits, eat some pizza. We'd love to have you guys there.
Okay, let me add an endorsement. When you're applying for jobs at the beginning of your second year, this is when you apply for law firm jobs. So basically, this summer, there are a few things that can separate your resume from the pile. One of them is law review. That's something that stands out to firms. And it stands out for a couple reasons. First, you learn the blue book like you never thought you would before. Whatever you've done in legal writing, you don't know anything yet. There are rules in there you've never even heard of. There are nuances, there are styles. So it shows you have an attention to detail. Second, it shows that you are willing to put the commitment into a lot of work. Don't let Anna fool you. It's a lot of work. Even as a 2L, as a member, or as a 3L when you get to be an editor, like Anna's coming to the board, there's a lot of work. Every year hosts a big symposium. You have invited speakers. It's a lot of good work for networking. So if your grades are in the ballpark, even if you're not sure, right, your grades might go up this semester. Rankings always shift after the second semester. You'll be surprised. Rankings move around a little bit. They did, right, Anna?
Yeah.
People did really well the first semester. Sometimes it shakes out. If people figure out what they're doing, they catch up. So I encourage you to take the write-on seriously. How many days is there for the write-on? A week?
It'll be in the information session. We tried to give more time, I think, this semester.
Oh, I had a week. Okay.
So I think it's almost 3 weeks.
Oh crap! I had a week.
have.
Okay, that's generous.
Yeah.
So take it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And
we also have more. I think we're doing 3 options this time for case notes,
Okay.
and it's also going to take the place of your case note requirement.
Oh, that's smart.
I know.
That's really smart.
Yeah, so
okay, well, pay attention. Go to the session. And
go to the session. We're making the new board is shaking things up. So. We have a Facebook page. It's South Texas Law Review, but I think it'll be in the main. What's the one on the main floor? Emil Sloan is upstairs.
Yeah, Emily. It's
Yeah.
well, Heather said it's in Emily's.
She okay. There you go.
Okay, listen to Heather knows everything. Listen to
She
Heather.
does. Heather is amazing. She's the new research editor.
She'll be your boss. Something like that. She's a good boss stuff. All right, anything else, Anna?
I don't think
And you were
so.
my class last year, right?
I was. How
And
did you?
you survived, right?
I
Okay,
did.
good. All right. See, they come back. They always like to say things. Okay. Any questions for Anna? Rachel? For me? You have a question for me? What could you possibly want to ask me? Well,
A bunch of us have read your current blog post.
you did, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really kind of interested and I wanted you to talk about it a little bit.
What is there possibly to talk about? Okay, fine. Yeah, I'll give you the spiel. All right, so fine. I'll do the same thing. I did it for my common law class. I'll do it for you again. So I speak at a lot of different law schools. You always think, why does he always have a suitcase, right? Why is he always I fly everywhere. And usually on a Monday or Wednesday or Friday when I'm not here, I'm speaking at law school. And earlier this semester, I was invited to speak at CUNY Law School, which is in Queens. Anyone from New York? Yeah, okay, Buffalo, right? Yeah. So, I mean, New York City. Okay, so Queens is a borough. They have a law school there, public law school. They originally wanted me to talk about originalism, which is a topic of common law. That didn't quite work out, so they said, why don't you talk about the First Amendment? I was like, okay, I'll talk about free speech. And I've given this talk a number of times. About a week before the event was on a Friday or maybe on Thursday, I got an email from a student who's organizing the event and said that people are going to be protesting. You know, like, protesting. I've never been protesting in my life. I don't think I do anything worthy of protest. I'm a boring law professor who talks about leases and subassignments and everything else. So I was like, okay, whatever. I'm still going to do it. So I arrive on campus, and the security guy informs me that they're demonstrating in the hallway. I'm like, oh, okay. And then he asked me, what's your exit strategy? Exit strategy. I'd never thought about that. Meaning, how am I leaving the building? I'm like, why are you asking me this? He's like, well, we have to think about all the possibilities. I'm like, wait, whoa. I'm giving a speech. What do you mean exit strategy? How? I said, well, I'm taking an Uber. Okay, good. Uber's good. He didn't want me going to the subway. I was like, oh, okay. There's that. And then he said that there are a few dozen people amassing in the hallway outside the room I was supposed to speak in. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'll play the video, and then you'll see the rest. The audio is not very good. The audio is not very good at all, but this is the best I can do. So this is me walking down the hallway, and
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Protesting me. It didn't work.
So I saw in one of the videos that she sent me, it's a video where you set up. You record yourself, yeah. No, I mean, you use a video. Yeah, I'm good. No. Using like references. Not doing that. Yeah. Thank you. Are they recording it? I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm not sure what would actually work here. I don't think I need to do. So we're going to ask you please to stay to the side or in the back. The front is reserved for the speakers.
Pursuant to.
I can go get Steve Katz or a dean. So, is this? I mean, if it is, it's fine. Is this acceptable under rules?
But also, they have like 5 people, so if you don't want to give them an audience, so he doesn't have to go out, we go out tomorrow. So I'd rather not give him content for even a few minutes. So just giving you that choice. Some of us are just going to be outside.
Okay. you, alright?
I have the sign. They kept it. I'll bring it to my office next week.
Just let me know when you're ready, okay?
What's that?
Let me know when you're ready, and I'll give a brief introduction.
Whatever you want, yeah.
Shame on you.
And all 7 of you that showed up. Had to be the
I don't
right.
understand how CUNY allows this. I just don't understand.
There are students that are directly affected by
This is really a
fucking
violation.
views. Legal objectivity is a myth.
You still have an opportunity to leave.
And also stop writing. So thank you guys for coming.
This is not okay.
I'm here to introduce Professor Dusch
Not okay.
from the South Texas College of Law. He's here today to discuss the topic of
Not okay.
freedom of speech in the context of university.
Will you publish it?
I don't understand. I just don't.
Professor Blackman has written numerous articles on numerous constitutional topics, and he's given this speech many times
And be okay with
before.
like doctorate.
And so, Professor Blackman, everyone.
He's filming us. Just so everyone
Well, thank you very much to CUNY for having me.
He's not having you.
White men and those who support white supremacy.
But not white. But not white.
Then white men those who support white supremacy.
Excuse me, I think it was already explained to you that you're not supposed to interrupt the speaker once he starts.
Alright, listen. Everybody stop. Let me tell you something. The university rules are people get to speak. You may protest. You may protest, but you may not keep anyone from speaking. If you do, I have other things to do. I will be back. Or you can resolve this yourself. Or you can have me resolve it.
Why are you bringing racism to your school? Can you answer that?
Why haven't you provided support for students who are affected by hate speech?
You
Here.
You're not children. You can't talk to us.
please don't take the bait. Don't take the bait.
She is threatening you guys. It's ultimately her choice whether she wants to do something. It's not our choice.
It's totally within her discretion.
She is literally
Making that choice, not us.
So, for those of you who are actually here to hear me speak, I'll try. When I came today, there was a sign handed around that says oppressors are not welcome. And it says at the bottom, we reject the idea that his views, my views, merit space on this campus, and reject the myth of legal objectivity. Josh Blackman is not welcome at CUNY Law. Congratulations, you made me feel not welcome, but I'm still going to say what I'd like to say. Thank you, I tried. So, I actually want to start by using the one legal argument you actually made. You said the violence exists in the law, and it's a myth that law is inherently neutral. Okay? And you said there's a myth of legal objectivity. So let me talk about legal objectivity for a few minutes, right? Someone did some excellent opposition research. Whoever did this, I actually applaud you. You found about 7 or 8 bullets on various videos I've given over the years. But I want to make a few points. For example, you wrote that I supported the president's decision to rescind DACA. Now let me tell you something. I actually support the DREAM Act. This might surprise you. I actually think the DREAM Act is a good piece of legislation.
That's why.
And we're a member. Oh, let me speak, please. And we're a member of Congress. I would vote for the DREAM Act. My position is that the policy itself was not consistent with the rule of law, which teaches a lesson, right? The lesson is this: you can support something as a matter of policy, but then find that the law doesn't permit it. And then the answer is to change the law.
Fuck the law.
Why don't you support people? Why don't you support
Fuck
people?
the law, right? That's a very good thing. You are in law school. bizarre thing to say, fuck the law, when you're...
It's not bizarre. Let them begin. Because you knew what would happen if you came here.
Well, if you let me speak. So fuck the law, right? That's a good mantra, fuck the law.
You know how many of us and how many of them?
You do. And I'm actually very impressed. Let me say this. I'm actually impressed that there's so many of you. You could be anywhere right now, and you chose to come out here and exercise your constitutional rights. You want to exercise your rights,
We're just
I'll do the same.
wrong because they are not acting right.
And I'm here the same. So I'm going to express my views. So let me go down this list you have. You have this little checklist, right? I think DACA. You want to go? Please leave, by all means. I think DACA is a good policy.
I think you're tired.
No, I'm feeling pretty good.
You're lying to yourself.
Okay.
Fuck.
Oh, that.
This is really about CUNY law and how you let this happen. And shame on all of you for being here. How could you let that happen here?
I don't support this, but I think
Then why are you here? Why are you here? Shame on this school.
I don't care. I support it.
Howard.
I want to ask them a really hard question, which we should all try to ask them very hard questions. Like the notion of legal objectivity.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
But it's never undermined by the fact that the Constitution is about one of the reasons why it's privacy. So the whole notion of neutrality is a false notion because it's a false notion.
Let him talk, please.
And I think that's a truism. So I think the idea of legal objectivity, ideally that's what we strive for in the law. But also at the same time, I think it's a false argument to sit up here and say that the law is always objective because it isn't. Look at all the innocent.
Their own convenience.
So after that, it was pretty good. It's all uphill from there. I spoke there for about another about an hour and 15 minutes, and I took questions. I didn't give my speech. I had a speech I wanted to give. I didn't give any of it. I took questions for a solid hour. Whatever they wanted to ask them questions, ask me questions. And I answered all their questions. And eventually they left, and I was like, okay, fine. But once the protesters left, it was fine. So there were about maybe 5 or 10 people in that room who were willing to actually engage with me, and the rest of them didn't care. And I actually think I made some headway. So there's one guy there holding a sign saying oppressors are not welcome. And he actually emailed me afterwards, you know what? I don't have enough evidence to conclude that you're an oppressor. I'll take it. It's a compliment. It was a very bizarre event. I've never been protested in my life. You see me here talking about future interests and boring stuff, but I talk about other stuff too as well. That's a little bit more controversial. I've never been protested ever. I don't know why they chose me. I don't think I've done anything to warrant this. But they decided that they want to interrupt my speech. You'll learn the First Amendment in common law. This is a public institution. They have every right to protest me in the hallway, hold up signs, whatever they want. They can't interrupt me. They cannot stop me from speaking. That is a line that you cannot cross. There's something called a heckler's veto, and let me explain what this is, right? Imagine there's someone who wants to give a speech, and it's very controversial, and a mob shows up and says, you know what, if you give that speech, we'll kill you. So the police have a choice. They can remove the one speaker or arrest all the mob. What do you think they choose? They remove the speaker, hence the exit strategy, right? They were asking, how are we going to get you out of this room? They weren't taking me out of the room. I was going to stick there. I was not leaving. Not a chance in hell. I didn't feel threatened, not for a minute. Those people were not going to touch me. These were pacifists of the utmost order. They were rude as hell, but they were not going to touch me. They were not going to hurt me. My dad was like, no. Look at them. They were not going to hurt me, right? They were maybe going to paper cut with their stupid signs, right? But they weren't going to hurt me. But I wasn't going to let them remove me, and I'm going to keep speaking, and I'm going to let them get their energy out, let them yell, scream, do whatever the hell they want to do, and then I'm going to do my spiel, and I'm going to do my thing. And once they left, it was fine. So there were at least some students at the law school that wanted to hear me speak. It's not the fuck the law thing, but they wanted to hear me speak. They wanted to hear what to say. A couple students, if you notice, the room was very empty at the beginning. At the end, there were about 30 people there. And this part is very poignant. They told me, we were afraid to walk in because we don't want to be shamed, that those protesters would see them walking in. They said, we came in later. And a bunch of people said, we are embarrassed in class to say something that might upset the mob, or upset these people. And that makes me very sad. And so someone asked me, how do I feel about this? I'm fine, right? I'm an adult. I can handle this. This is what I'm paid to do. I feel bad for these protests. I feel bad for them. Like, this is how they react to people they disagree with. They have to protest and shout me down. It's a parody. It's not real. I don't know how they're going to be equipped to interact in a court, right? Imagine, so you go to the Supreme Court. Mr. Chief Justice, may it please the court, fuck the law, right? I mean, what do you do with that? What do you do with that? How do you? Anyway, but you can go through this later. They were all law students, yes, ma'am. You're giving me a look. What's that look?
I thought they were like undergrad.
No. This was only a law school. It's a sole law school campus.
I thought they were middle school.
I mean, there may have been outsiders, but there was only law classes on this campus, so they were all law schools. I'm sorry?
I was thinking that people going to thousands of dollars of debt to learn the law just to say fuck the law. Like, you really
Anyway, so okay, nice. Be nice.
So just one last thing. Exactly
no,
what was their issue?
that I'm an oppressor.
How did you become an oppressor?
So look.
Oh, okay.
So the fact that I'm associated with the Federal Society, which is a conservative libertarian group, and the fact that I've taken positions on legal matters like DACA and the travel ban, et cetera, they disagree with, that makes me an oppressor.
So I've noticed a theme with our class and the protests. You are really not a fan of being interrupted.
You don't say.
I know. I think that's a good.
You don't say.
We all have opinions,
But I have to admit, the only sign I actually liked was this one. Your legal analysis is lazy and wrong. I'll give her half of that. Maybe she's half right. I'll tell you half. Yeah, I've never had this before, so I was somewhat impromptu. If anyone has advice of how to do this better next time, you can tell me. I was. You have advice?
No. I didn't have any advice. I noticed we all have our pet peeves, and that.
No, I don't like being interrupted. But if you notice, I didn't speak for 4 or 5 minutes. I was just there silent because what they wanted me to do, and I wasn't going to give in, was to start yelling at them and screaming at them and calling them names. I wasn't going to give in. I was not going to give them what they wanted because that's exactly. They wanted me to go blow up on them. I wasn't giving them that. I was going to wait till they shut up. And I knew they'd eventually burn out steam because you can only sustain that for so long. In fact, we put a little game then. We started 20 minutes late just to let them burn up some steam. I hope they would quiet down. But, they didn't make it 4 or 5 minutes. Yeah, read.
So was that a professor saying don't take the bait?
Yeah, it was a professor. Yeah. Yes, I was a professor. Yep. Professor at the law school. Mike?
Next time, sir, if I could recommend, you gotta take some selfies with the lady with the one good sign. That guy, the homeless looking guy.
Be nice. He was a nice. He actually asked me nice questions. So this is the closest I got to a selfie after. I thought this was funny. Anyway, yeah, Rachel.
Well, you said that, like the kids or the students that
They're
waited,
adults. They're not kids. They're adults.
The students that waited to come into
Yeah.
until after they left because they were like afraid of being shamed by the people that
Yeah.
were protesting. I think that you saying that for them, bring that up raises a really interesting point because I've had conversations outside of class with other students about people not speaking up their opinions during class because they don't want to feel or get attacked by other people.
Yeah.
And I feel like it really hinders your ability to learn how to have a civilized discussion and debate in a classroom setting because people do stuff like that.
I couldn't agree more. It's, this property is pretty boring. I mean, there's not much that's controversial in this class, but you'll have other classes in law school that are not so boring. I mean, maybe property's not boring. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. I've come to like teaching property more than con law because there's actually stuff to teach as law. Not just fucking law, but there's actual law to teach, right? In my first round class, I'm cursing the entire class, so this is not unusual. But Rachel raises a very good point because if people are afraid to raise a point in class, then let me put it this way: if you have an idea and you're afraid to say it, then you think, "Man, I'm the only one who wants to say this." You're probably wrong. If you have that idea, there's probably 10 other people with the same idea, and if all of you stay quiet, then you're all silent. You'll think you're in the minority, but there might be others who share it. So usually when I give this speech in law schools, I give it in all over the country. I say, this is your last opportunity of your life to think critically. Once you graduate and sit for the bar, you're going to grind, right? You're going to be doing tax law, criminal law. You're not going to be able to think about big ideas. This is your moment. And if you keep your mouth shut, you're selling yourself short. You're paying all this money for tuition, and you're ripping yourself off. I mean that. So in this class, other classes, always raise your hand. I don't think there's any professor at this school that shut people down. I think we're pretty good. Maybe I'm wrong. I try not to. I hope I don't. If I do, you yell at me. Yeah, if you do yell at me, I'm guilty as all, I'm sure, of not doing stuff intentionally, but this stuff's very, very important. In fact, these kids actually were tweeting pictures about it beforehand. They were bragging, free speech, not invite, get away from our campus, go home, Josh Blackman. I actually was home. I was in New York. This was on the eve of Passover. I went back, had a beautiful Seder the next night. CUNY students make very clear that nonsense from free speech is not welcome at a public interest law school. Shame on CUNY. My existence is greater than your opinion. Antifa. Hashtag. My free speech is... That doesn't make any sense. Okay, whatever. Anyway, so it was a weird experience. I'll be ready for it next time. I didn't know it was going to happen. The guy told me they're in the hallway. Like, okay, let me get my camera. You know the little camera I have? That's why actually the battery's dead. The battery's burned. I've got to recharge it. But I was basically walking on the camera with my little camera, just telling everyone because I knew exactly what was going to happen. And I do this as a teaching exercise. Whenever I give a speech in the future on free speech, I'm going to play this. Instant credibility, right? But I mean it. They can protest. I couldn't care less about their protest in the hallway. I thought that was funny. Some of their signs were hilarious. You're lazy and wrong. Good. Okay, that's funny. But you can't shout someone down. You can't block me walking in the door. That's a no-no.
Do you think if you wouldn't have known and it was like a surprise, you would have handled it as well as you did?
I had maybe 15 minutes notice to think about this. I didn't have much notice. Like, I had a 30-minute lecture all written out that I wanted to give. I'll tell you, so they had this little pamphlet, this little flyer that they circulate throughout the building, like 8 different points criticizing me. And they did some homework. They actually went through all my YouTube channel and pulled out random quotes out of context with isolation, making me look like a really, really bad person. No, Marcos, you're right. Someone did opposition research on me. I think they might have been outside help. I don't know. I can't prove it. But I said this in my earlier class, they put as much effort into protesting their LSATs. I'll leave it there. But my point is, I think that outside help, because I don't think they did this. Maybe they did. Maybe I don't know. They did themselves. It's impressive. But I found this little flyer in a trash can, and it was about me saying, they'll think oppressor is Josh Black, not welcome. I was like, okay, this is my template. And my goal was to go through each of the items they put up about me and discuss each item one by one. And the first item was at DACA. That's as far as I got. They ran away after that. They couldn't handle it. Or maybe they did. I don't know. But I was like, I'm going to throw my talk in the garbage, take this out of the garbage, and talk about whatever they have on this list. And we'll go one down, one at a time. And I was going to ask them about each item. Because, in hindsight, I didn't know they were going to leave. I thought they'd sit there for the full hour. And I was ready to go. I was going to be there all night if they wanted me. I wasn't leaving one bit. But I wanted to engage them on whatever they had on their little pamphlet. Because that was the only thing I could do. And I didn't give my speech. I let them ask me questions. People asked me questions about originalism and textualism and slavery and racism. People throwing questions about everything, right? There was one guy, a guy named Lamar, sitting in the back row. He's the guy said, I'm not white, right? They're saying, why are you with him, right? He's a white supremacist. Why are you sitting in the room with him? And he's like, I want to hear what this guy has to say. And, I was grateful he was there. We had a pretty good discussion back and forth for an hour, asking lots of good questions. So, it was a bizarre experience. I'm not here to brag. I don't think this is very important in the long run. But if you have any friends in other law schools, any friends in colleges, brothers, sisters, younger brothers and sisters in colleges, you have to tell them to be aware of this, that if they care about the future of law, they need to not try to fuck it over, as it were. Okay, that's the last one. I'm done. But my point here is actually serious. I'm putting frivolity aside. These people are law students, right? They'll be lawyers probably in the next 2 or 3 years. Right? In a decade, they become judges. Oh. Right? So when these sorts of people become judges, what happens to free speech? Yeah, I mean, I give this lecture to high school students. I give this lecture to high school kids all the time, saying, look, you're going to college next year. Protest, fine. Protest is lovely. But you can't take platforms away from people. You can't uninvite speakers. You can't do whatever. I'm actually grateful CUNY didn't uninvite me. They could have done that. They could have just said, Blackman, you're not welcome on campus. That was the administrator, the woman who came and started yelling at them. She actually was, on my side nominally, right? they should have done a little bit more to clear out the space behind me. But whatever, I wasn't gonna make a fuss. They weren't threatening me. If they got close to me, I may have been worried. But they were enough distance away from me. But it's a weird thing. I don't know what I did to deserve this. Here it is. Rachel?
So, clearly this is going to be the kind of, we're going to run into people like this when we go into practice.
Assuming they passed the bar.
Yeah, when we get out of law school, people that don't, and I mean, I have people like this in my life now that refuse to hear a different opinion, that will just interrupt you, shut you down, that kind of thing. How would you recommend interacting with
Do what I did. Do this. So, people often ask me, how do you persuade people? And right? I don't ever try and browbeat my students saying, here's what you have to believe. I think it's a waste of time. People have their beliefs for a reason. They're not idiots. They have these beliefs. These people believe what they believe for a reason. They believe I'm a fascist, I'm a white supremacist, I'm a Nazi for a reason. Okay, I'm not going to convince them otherwise. All I can do is make them see a different perspective. And if they at least acknowledge that, okay, maybe there might be a reason why he has this view, I win. I'm happy with that. So I think I told you, one guy who had a sign saying Josh is an oppressor emailed me after, you know what, maybe you're not an oppressor. I don't have enough evidence to conclude you're an oppressor. This sort of, funny walk back. But allow people to see there's another perspective. If they're not willing to listen to you, it's something of a lost cause. But I don't engage in vitriol. Those of you who follow me on Twitter, I don't do flame wars. I don't yell at people. I think it's not productive. I deleted my Facebook account 2 years ago. That's a goner. Just get rid of it. It's not worth having. Not worth having at all. But, this class is a good example, right? We don't yell at each other. Has anyone ever yelled in this class at each other? I mean, this stuff is not very controversial, but I taught abortion today in con law. That's a heavy topic, right? No one yelled at each other. It's respectful. People have different views. That's fine. But always keep your cool and be the bigger person. I'm actually, with this happening, I was like, oh God, don't start crying. But, no, it's true. I was like, oh crap. Because, I mean, look at this hallway. It's a little bit intimidating, right? Describe it like this, right? If anyone ever been to like a wedding or bar mitzvah or Sweet 16, and like all these people are just showering their love on you, right? When you're walking down the room, right? This is the opposite. Where it's a room full of people showering their hate at you and their intolerance. And it's just bizarre feeling. But, you suck it up and then you try and keep your cool. Rachel, I don't know better to tell you, but show them this video and see if they say, yeah, go protesters, right? Or go Blackman.
Yeah. Did you get any correspondence from South Texas admin from after this happened?
No, I'm tenured now. Screw it. No. No. Actually, no. So the dean emailed me. He's like, no, Dean Gooder is actually very good. He believes in free speech. He's opposite me politically, but he's very good in free. I sent it to this morning. I was like, Dean, this is going to blow up today. He's like, thank you, Josh. But I got my tenure about 24 hours before this happened, so I was like, okay, I'm good. But it matters because the reason why tenure is important, and you may not appreciate this, is that academics are expected to take somewhat controversial positions. They're designed to challenge status quos and not be retaliated against that for their employment. So I wasn't worried about this at all. Marco?
Yeah, just hypothetically speaking, what if you were fired though? What would happen with us?
Well, I hope I'm not fired. I mean, I think you get another teacher. I think you'd be okay. Probably the exam would be a pass-fail. It might be to your advantage.
Oh.
No word limit. I mean, it'd be a little bit easier, perhaps. I don't know. No, but I mean, the reason why tenure exists is to allow this to happen. Now, would CUNY ever hire me? I think their students would burn the building down. I went there for a 1-hour lecture, and they nearly stormed me out the room, challenging boo, and they're hissing at you. It's a very strange thing. I don't know. I mean, I feel bad. I really feel bad for these students. They're missing out on something that they don't even know what's going on. Rachel?
A lot of them, when you had the video of walking down the hallway,
Yeah.
a lot of them are smiling. It almost seems like they weren't serious or they were doing it as a joke. But
That's a
I
good
feel
point.
like if you're very passionate about what you're protesting for, you're not gonna sit there and laugh and smile while that person is walking down the hallway. You're gonna be serious and show that you're actually upset about a lot of the girls that are standing her or him. I can't tell, but they're smiling.
You just committed a microaggression, my friend. Go ahead.
But they're just as you're walking down the hallway, so many of them are laughing and smiling, and I'm like, you don't seem like you're being serious about what you're protesting for. You're supposed to be taking a stand about something you supposedly believe in, but you're sitting here laughing and like treating it like a joke.
And they also had arts and crafts, so they made the poster boards in the hallway. They brought in poster boards and magic markers and had a little arts and crafts session. I don't throw cookies. Yes, Celeste.
Maybe it's their first protest, and smiling is a nervous habit that they have. So.
Possibly. No, I understand they protested before. They protest everyone who comes
I smile
there.
all the time sometimes because I'm a little nervous.
You should have walked down with your giving out high fives. You know?
If I had a free hand, I would have.
Put on like the Rocky music to.
I know, right?
All right. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, that's fine. Mariah, go.
Do you know if the school warned them beforehand about not being able to...
Yeah, so I have a tweet about this. There's always a tweet about everything. So shortly before the event, the CUNY dean sent out an email with an attachment to their disciplinary policy. And I found this tweet, you get my name right. Is Justin Blackman a football player? Wasn't there a guy from the Oklahoma State Cowboys? Yeah, but it's spelled differently. But anyway, this is only at the nation's premier public interest law school. Does a dean send an email about limits on protest after a conservative student org sends a reminder about the vile speaker that they're bringing to campus? What does this emoji mean? Upside down? Is this like dead? I don't know what this is. but the dean did send an email about me, and the policy and their policy is that you're allowed one warning and then you can be disciplined. So they got their warning from the administrator who came in, and they all dispersed because they were afraid of getting disciplined, perhaps. Right? They all left, and then they went to the dean's office. They stormed there to protest the dean. Like, why do you let Blackman on campus? He's a racist. He's a white supremacist and everything else. General at Yo-Yo It's Flow.
I have a question.
Yeah, Samta, then 1, 2, 3, yeah.
You mentioned these students going on to be judges and stuff, and this is, I guess, going on with Rachel's point. Do you actually believe that they believe in this opinion because they walked out instead of addressing the thing they came to protest, or do you think they're just doing it for now and then in the future it's not going to be like this?
So they might grow up.
Hopefully. Like it's a thing to do because it makes no sense that you have a belief but you don't want to discuss your belief.
I don't know the answer to your question. I hope and pray that you're right, that this is just they're having fun and they're acting out. But you know, they put marker to paper. They made these signs, right? Yeah. I mean, maybe they were doing it for fun to make a point. Maybe they were protesting the idea of things. I wish I knew. Yeah, Roxanne.
So you mentioned because it was a public school, you mentioned their policies, and I know that this happened to Briscoe King at 3rd and Marshall.
Yep, Briscoe.
Last semester. So what is like our school? What would a private school?
So if you don't know, Briscoe Kane is an alum of this law school. He graduated, I think, 2011 or 12. He graduated right when I got here. He's a member of the State House, very conservative guy. And he was invited to TSU to speak Thurgood Marshall, and they shot him down. They protested. He had his exit strategy. They basically made him leave the room. They had a school official remove him from the room because they thought it wasn't safe. I don't buy it. He was safe, but they were just trying to shut down the event. At a private institution, we're not bound by the First Amendment in any way, shape, or form, but we have a pretty good history of free speech here, and as long as I'm here, we're going to have that for sure, in that we allow students to invite speakers, and as long as the speaker comes under permission, he's allowed to speak, and there's no shouting down, no protesting. I've been here 6 years. I've never seen anything remotely close to this in anything I've been here in 6 years, and I'll be here for a very long time. I would not want to see this ever on my tenure. Yeah, Rachel?
He came and spoke.
Yeah, he did.
Not long after.
Everything was cool?
A few weeks later.
Everything was smooth, no disruption, right?
Yeah, and he kind of addressed it, and he, like you said, that he didn't think there was he didn't have any danger to him, and they just kind of removed him. He basically said it was like BS, that they made him leave. He's like, I was fully prepared to kind of like still talk how I had expected to, but they didn't want the commotion or whatever that was happening, so they basically, like you said, made him leave.
That's why when the guy says, "What's your exit strategy?" I was thinking of Briscoe, and I'm like, I'm not leaving this room. They're gonna have to drag me out of that room. I wasn't leaving. No way. Not giving them that moral victory. Not gonna give it to them. No, I mean that. I was not giving them victory. If I left in tears, they would, to Sumta's point, they wouldn't have learned a lesson. They would say, "Aha, that's how we get people to shut up by shouting it down."
I mean, I think you handled it really well, especially like taking the paper that you found and like wanting to address everything that they said out of context.
Yeah.
I think addressing it and like telling them your actual beliefs, and even though they left like something to say, they didn't want to hear it. I mean, if they were really standing for what they believed in, they would have had a discussion with you about it.
Maybe.
So.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
I think that's why they left early, because they couldn't really argue, and you know, like the saying goes, you can't handle the heat.
Can't take the heat.
Yeah, that saying.
Yeah, the classroom.
Yeah.
Because I'm fire, hashtag. What else? Awful. Anyone else? Get it out of your system while you have it. Jolie, go ahead.
There are some topics that are charged for people for different reasons.
Yeah.
So you could be stating your opinion about a particular thing that someone has personal experience with, so they're going to have a visceral response.
Yeah.
And so when you publish your opinion, if it's so, I haven't stalked you anywhere. I have no clue what they're talking about. Now I'm gonna have to go look after it's But the thing is that how do you take into account when you take a position that is controversial, that has adverse effects for people who you not necessarily even may know, but how do you deal with that? How do you formulate your argument so that it is not from a position of privilege?
Yeah. So Julian puts a good question. I'll give you an easy example, right? I've written several books on the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, and I've been pretty critical. So I gave a talk a couple years ago. One woman says, "My mother has cancer, and but for Obamacare, she'd be dead." It's a fair question, right? I've given talks on the DACA program. The DACA program. My family member is DACA. I've given talks on the travel ban. I met one guy who says, "I'm from Iraq. I was subject to it." What I always take very careful to note is my position on the legal aspect different than my policy aspect. And I can think that DACA is a good policy, but the president doesn't have the power to do it. That's not very reassuring to someone who faces deportation, and I accept that, and I acknowledge that. And I think that's a lot of the visceral reaction we had here in CUNY. I get that, and I do debates across the country on a wide range of topics. I work very hard to distinguish my legal and policy views, although for most people it's what the result that matters. But I will keep speaking. And the worst thing to do is to, in the face of opposition, to shut your mouth, because then there's no challenge to arguments that I think are legally suspect, especially among academics. A lot of academics will just fall into line. Yeah, Rachel?
I watched some of your YouTube videos. Well, just the ones like recently, like you just on certain newscasts, and I've noticed that you do that. Like a lot of the newscasters will try and prompt you to mix your policy and your legal arguments.
Lou Dobbs.
They try to like twist your words almost, and you do a really good job of keeping them very separate.
I try, but it doesn't matter, right? So if you're someone who's affected by the travel ban or DACA, the take care clause is not very important to you, right? The separation of powers isn't very important. If that's what matters is the result. That if your uncle can't come to the United States, that's what matters to you. And I get that, right? I get that. I often find myself in a position where I'm defending stuff that I don't like very much, because I think often the law doesn't yield the answer you want. And what I was trying to convey to the students there is the answer isn't to change the law if you don't like it or vote someone out of office. It's not to say fuck the law. Sorry, I'm cursing way too much today. I'll stop. What else? Anything else? We got property to cover. Exciting. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
You've never experienced anything like this at any of the other universities that you spoke at?
Never experienced anything like this before. Never. Not even close. The closest I got was I gave a lecture at Michigan Law School. There was another professor debating me on the travel ban, and he said, "I enable evil." And he compared me to the lawyers who worked for Roosevelt in the Korematsu case. So he said your arguments are good, but you're like the Korematsu lawyers. So there you go. I'll leave it there. So my skin's been thickened over the years, I suppose. All right. So it was a boring class, didn't you? What else? Anything on your minds? And if you want to talk to me, I'll be at my office afterwards if you want to comment. If you have advice on maybe how I should do things differently, I welcome your advice. You're all smart students. You're in the same position as I was a couple years ago, so I don't think I know everything. And again, I had 15 minutes to think about this beforehand. I didn't have much time. Yes? Yeah, but you know what they think about the law. Which is why that was such a bizarre thing to say. They were in law school. Yeah, Rachel.
I mean, I was like going off that, just the way that they handled it and went about it. Like, if they were just to stand in the hallway and hold their signs and just like let you know how they felt, but those girls like consistently interrupted you and were being rude and then said fuck the law, and I was like, as law students, and it just seemed very childish the way that they handled it, and that's worrisome that they're going to be lawyers if they pass the bar. They're going to be lawyers within the future, near-ish future, and that's like, how are we supposed to handle that? Like, people.
I'm going to keep speaking and shining a light at this. So, I had breakfast with Jim Alfini yesterday. I'm going to move on after this, and we had a colleague a couple years ago. Harry Reid, who died at 92, he was still teaching at 92. And I told Jim, I want to be teaching at 92. And that will be the year 2176, the tricentennial. So if I'm still teaching for the tricentennial, we'll have a big party, okay? And I'll be still yelling at people. All right, Matt.
If someone reported expressing disdain for the law in general like that, is that something the bar can be able to take into consideration?
I'm not going to comment on that. New York's a one-party recording state, which means you can record people without their consent. These videos are now on YouTube. I'll leave it there. Oh. Yeah, there's actually apps that goes through protest footage and uses facial recognition, matches with their Facebook. So, yeah. Anyway, other questions? Cambridge Analytica, right? Yeah.
When making arguments to separate your policy and legal arguments, when in reality shouldn't do that.
Yeah. Some people think there's no difference.
No, I'm asking. I'm asking. Like, sometimes they want both, right? Like, if your legal opinion doesn't match your policy opinion so much, do you talk about both?
Yeah.
Why one is wrong, like Jackie, for example, policy you agree with, but the law you don't agree with. Do you offer ways in which we can change it, or do you just?
Well, the short answer is you elect people who vote differently, right? It's a very easy answer. And if you can't elect people who vote differently, that means the law stays the same. I'll use DACA as an example. Or DAPA, which was the predecessor of the successor of DAPA. I put a brief to the Supreme Court where I said, I agree with this as a matter of policy, but I think it's unconstitutional. I put that right in the very first paragraph of the brief to the U.S. Supreme Court. I mean it. And the courts put 4-4 on it after Scalia's death, so it'll be up back for another year or so. It's a good question. What else? Jillian?
So the law is never black and white. Your opinion has to enter into the side that you take. So how do you resolve saying that your opinion about the law does not necessarily agree with what you believe? Because you can argue both sides. That's what we're learning to do, right? So how do you...
So it's a good question. So when you're an advocate, right, you're hired by a client. You're paid to pick a side, right? Academics are somewhat unique in that they're not paid to pick a side. We're expected to, this might sound naive, but pursue a truth. And I can pursue one truth, my colleague across the hall can pursue another truth. But I think based on my reading and my thinking that I've reached the best answer I have what the law is. Does my opinion infect it? I'm sure it does. I'm positive it does. But I can tell you with all humility that I think I've reached the best result. And especially where I reach your legal result that goes against my instincts, that tells me that I'm probably on the better track. Because if your legal results always match your opinion, you gotta have to second guess yourself. I'll give you a good example. So there's a case we'll study in common law called Texas versus Johnson. Always Texas, right? Texas threw a guy in jail for burning an American flag at a protest. It was at the Republican National Convention in Dallas. And the Supreme Court threw out the conviction saying, no, flag burning is protected speech. Case was 5-4. Who cast the fifth vote? Antonin Scalia. So Justice Scalia would always hold his opinion saying, look, I don't like flag burners. He says, I would throw all these scruffy bearded weirdos in jail. That's a paraphrase, but that's what he said. But if the Constitution compels a result, that's where you go. And usually when I give this talk, I say something to this effect. If every single legal position you take on abortion, affirmative action, or marriage mirrors the way you would vote at the ballot, just give it a second thought. If your legal opinions don't match how you vote at the ballot, you say, well, maybe there's something there. I'm not criticizing. People in good faith can reach different conclusions, but I try to be as honest as I can with myself. That's a good question. I'm not perfect. I'm lazy and wrong, apparently. So you see. Anything else? Can I move on? Thank you. Joyce is done with us. Yeah, you're done? Property. All right, let's see this question. Boring as hell. But I can tell you there's a right answer to this question. Jillian, I can't tell you the right answer on, the 14th Amendment, but I can tell you there's a right answer to this question. Okay? All right, so here's your question. Oh, we're going to have to go, whoa. We'll finish, I promise. So O conveys Blackacre to A in fee simple. A enters Blackacre and finds the property is condemned and he cannot live there. At common law, A can rescind the purchase. Okay, another 30 seconds. Okay. All right. Where am I? What do you think the answer is here?
So I thought it was A first because of Hannan. Then I was looking at it, and I don't think it's.
Whoa, this is what kind of state is this? It's simple, like the first day of class, right?
Then I think it's B. So, I was thinking because we read about rivers.
Yeah. Okay, so you say false. So let me ask this question as the follow-up. When you are selling property in fee simple, for example, is there an expectation of the state of the property you're conveying?
That you're able to, that you just get the property.
Yeah. You're giving the land itself. It doesn't matter on it, right? But with leases, right, it's a different story. Right? Yeah. So the short answer is, the answer here is B. The answer here is false. I'll move a little quickly, right? And I can tell you the answer here is false without a doubt. So you guys did. But the reason why the answer is false, okay, that's pretty good, 75%. The reason why the answer here is false, B, is because when you convey property fee simple, there's no expectation about its state. You're just selling the land by itself. With leases, the answer is a little bit different. And today we talk about one aspect of it, which is the delivery of leases, right? When you actually arrive at a piece of property. Now who's next? Is Sumta or Reeve? Who's next? Okay, so Sumta, let's move a little bit quickly. Hannan versus Dusch. You want to give me the facts there, please?
Yes. So for this case, the plaintiff leased the land to move in on the first. Okay, sorry, I had to pull up my chapter. Okay, so leased the land to move in on January 1st. However, when he got there, there was still previous tenants living on the land.
Good.
The defendant didn't do anything about it, and the plaintiff didn't do anything about it either. He actually just waited and
Okay, very good. Okay, so is it Caitlin? Yes, got it. Okay, Caitlin. Caitlin, so let's say an example, right? You sign a lease, right? And you show up the very first day, January 1st, supposed to move in, and there's someone holding over, right? What do?
You just regularly would probably talk to the landlord, but in the English.
No, you're going to be 5 steps ahead. Yeah. So if you, Caitlin, it's year 2018, right? You show up and there's some guy in your apartment holding over. What are you going to do, realistically speaking? Right? The landlord, right? Let me change the hypo, Caitlin. You go in there the first day, the place is empty. Day number 2, some guy comes in, he has a key. He's the previous tenant. He opens the door and says, hey, what's up? I'm your roommate. Who do you call? Oh, no, you don't call the landlord at that point. Who are you calling? You're calling the cops, right? Or you're calling your Uncle Smith and Wesson, right? You're calling either of those, right? You're going to call the cops to expel the intruder. But then, so Nikisha, the question is this. What's the difference between the person being there on the first day or the second day? Why the first day, like, okay, I'll call the landlord. And the second day, I'm calling the cops. Like, why is there a difference there, you think? Just as a realistic matter. And what do you think comes with the lease? Legally, no, not just F law. Legally, what does the lease entitle you have? Very good, right? So you assume, right, that when you sign a lease, you are taking it, as Nikisha said, an empty apartment, right? You're coming in there and you're the only tenant. There's no holdover there. This is what's called, right? This is what's called a covenant of delivery. Right? A covenant of delivery. That's what it's called. The word covenant means promise, right? Like Ark of the Covenant in the Bible, right? Covenant means promise. Now read. Did anything stop the plaintiff and defendant in this case from inserting a covenant of delivery inside the lease? Could they have contracted for this, actually put this as a term in their contract? No. Why didn't they?
Because there's an implied
Now that's presuming the question, right? If the covenant's not written, the parties didn't agree to it, then the question becomes, can the court imply a covenant? Read, what does an implied covenant mean?
An implied covenant is that the lessor has a duty that the premises shall be open upon the start of the lease.
Okay, now the question is, should a court imply a covenant of delivery? Ryan, what does the court do here?
We look at the 2 different rules, the English rule.
Very good. Okay. So tell me about them, please.
So the English rule implies that the lessee takes possession of it, and they can take legal action against the landlord.
Very good. So, very good. Thank you. So the English rule, not the English muffin, the English rule, Alfini had English muffin for breakfast, so I'm thinking about him. He likes English muffins. So the English, he's a good guy. I'm going to miss him. I will. I really will. I know. We're bae. So the English rule says that the landlord has an expectation to put the tenant in physical occupation, right? That's not just a delivery of a legal title. It's a delivery of a physical occupation. Nikisha's word, an empty building, right? No one else is there. That's the English rule. Jake, tell me about the American rule.
It's basically like people are living the American rule. That's like burdensome on the landlord.
Now, what is the American rule? Tell me what it is, please.
Basically,
Is there an implied warranty of delivery of covenant? Yeah. So the American rule, very good, Jake. The American rule says the landlord is not bound to put the tenant in actual possession, only bound to put it in legal possession. This is the significance of my question at the outset of class. At common law, when you convey property in fee simple, you only give legal possession. You do not convey actual possession, right? The American rule is like the common law rule. The English rule is the more modern one, which says you have to convey both legal and actual possession. Texas, applies, guess, the American rule, right? Now, that shouldn't surprise anyone in this room, right? Texas, people shaking their heads, no. Texas applies the American rule. Okay. All right. So, any questions on the first case? Yes, please. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so as a tenant, then we would want to be in a state that has the
Well, Ashley, let me ask you this question, right? Is there anything stopping you from adding a term to your lease requiring an actual covenant of delivery? Can you add that term to a contract?
as a tenant.
Yeah.
I mean, the landlord would have to accept the term. Correct?
Very good. Right. So, as a general matter, I think almost every lease in the United States has a covenant of delivery in it. I'm sure if you guys want to check your lease when you go home, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Go home and check it. Tell me if it doesn't. But I'd wager that when you sign a lease, you're actually being guaranteed actual possession as well. But the question in this case is whether the courts can step in and imply it for you if you don't do it. Now, this is an old case, from early 1900s. But I think as a modern rule, even if it's not required by the law, you can add it in your contract. Okay, make sense? All right, any questions on the first one? All right, let's do on page 483. There's a question. We'll do one of them to save a little bit of time. Ash, you want to read it, please, for me? Question number 1.
So, two leases would allow a large piece of open land to be used for hunting or camping. After paying a year's rent in advance, it finds out that there is no public access to the land. Neighboring landowners refuse to give to Enrst and egress.
That means entry and exit. Yeah, go ahead.
The jurisdiction follows the English rule, as else satisfied the duty imposed by that rule.
What do you think, Ashton? Under the English rule. That's correct. Why is the answer no?
Because under the English rule, they would have to allow the tenant entrance and
What's the key word begins with an A? Not just entrance.
access.
You said the right first syllable. I almost said yes, and then you changed the second syllable. Yeah. Okay, good job. You finished up. Yeah, you were doing like Mad Libs, right? They don't have actual access to the property. They can't get in. They can't get out. Right? If you sell a piece of property in the English rule and you can't get in, can't get out, there's no actual access. Therefore, it's a violation of the lease. Under the American rule, this is just fine. You've just leased a piece of land you can't get to without trespassing, right? You have to trespass to get to the land. But that's fine. Matt? Well, in this case, it's actual access because it's actually getting onto the land. But it would include ultimately an actual possession. That's what I had there? All right, let's do the next case. The next case, Ernst v. Conditt, is designed to distinguish for you between a sublease and an assignment. A sublease and an assignment. Okay, Esther, can you tell me please what's the difference between a sublease and an assignment? Okay, very good. So the difference between an assignment and a sublease, think of it in terms of the bundle of sticks, right? When you take a lease from a landlord, right, you are getting, one stick in the bundle, right? You have a lease and your landlord has a reversion. That is, when your lease ends, it goes back to the landlord, okay? With an assignment, you're giving your stick to someone else, right? You're saying, peace, I'm out, right? I am not involved in this anymore. I am no longer in relationship with the landlord. right? With an assignment, you're giving your lease stick to someone else. With a sublease, imagine like you're breaking your stick in, I'm not going to spill, but you break your stick in half, right? And you're giving part of your stick to the person you're subleasing it to, meaning you are both on the hook. The landlord first goes to the subleasee, and if he doesn't pay up, he goes to you. The reason why the distinction between a sublease and assignment matters is who the landlord can go after. With an assignment, the landlord can only go after the assignee. With an assignment, the landlord can only go after the assignee. With a sublease, the landlord can go after either the tenant or the subleasee. Right? You can go after either of them. This is what matters. So if you're a landlord and you're deciding, do I give a sublease or an assignment? Which you prefer? You prefer a sublease. Why? There are two people to sue, right? You have a better shot at collecting that way. Everyone with me? Everyone understand the difference, right? I'm assuming almost all of you have done a sublease at some point, college, whatever. Probably a few of you did an assignment because they're not preferred. They're usually not allowed. As a general matter, stupid thing. As a general matter, landlords have to consent to a sublease or an assignment. They can't do it automatically. Now, lots of kids do illegal subleases without telling their landlord, but those are risky because that can actually be a breach of contract, and then you might be in trouble. Yeah, Andrew.
Actually, I was going to say I actually spent several years as a leasing agent.
Oh, did you?
And you'd actually be surprised how many properties we'll call it subleases, and even on their leases and legal forms, it'll say sublease is the title, but in the text, it'll say assignment.
Okay, and that's the problem in our next case, right? Because depending whether it's a sublease or an assignment, you have fewer people to sue. Did you ever go after an assignee or a subleasee and have to have issues with that when you were in the business?
We did have, yes, we did actually have one that actually I almost had to go to court for.
Oh, really?
That helped like testify and everything, but where we did go after the person, the assignee or the subleasee, and he basically said, no, you can't go after me until you go after them or the subleasor and whatnot. And I actually remember that one.
It's a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's problematic. Because it's this game of chicken, right? If you go after one, the other one says, aha, I'm free, and then you have to go after the other one. All right. I'm sorry, Rob?
The assignment?
With an assignment, right? Let me write this out, right? Here. So you have the landlord. Okay. With a sublease, so originally you have the landlord and tenant, right? With a sublease, what happens? The landlord can go after the tenant or the subleasee. I'm spelling that wrong. Subleasee, right? That's the person who's assigned the lease. Assigned's the wrong word. That's the person who's given the sublease. Okay? With an assignment, the landlord can only go after the assignee. That is the person who's assigned the lease. Does that make sense, Rob? Okay, good. Because you're next. Wait, no, we're done cursing. No, enough cursing. Get back. Are you prepared? You just started. You prepared? But yeah, so give me the facts, please, in Ernst v. Conditt. Yeah.
Alright, so Ernest released the land to Rogers, and Rogers built up the racetrack and some upgrades, and used the land as like some kind of racetrack. And he only used it for like 3 months, I think, and then afterwards he assigns the leaseholds to Conditt.
Good.
He operated a goat cart track for a few months.
Good.
Stopped paying his rent. After about 3 months.
Okay, very good. So we have this lease, right? We have this lease. And the language in the lease, oh, here we go. Let me go down to the amendments. Okay. Where is it? Okay. Oh, here it is. Okay. So we have this language, right? The lessor hereby consents to the subletting to A.K. Conditt by the express condition understanding that the original lessee, Rogers, will remain personally liable for the faithful performance of all the terms and conditions of the original lease. Okay? So, Batul, right? It says here sublease, right? Why isn't this an easy case? Why isn't this just a sublease? Why is this even difficult? I'm sorry, a little bit louder, please. You're right. The court held that it was an assignment. But why is this not the beginning and end of the equation? Right? Why is this not everything? Why don't we let the language control the outcome of this case? So it's sublease right there, subletting. And it even says Rogers remains personally liable. Roxy, you want to take a stab? Why is this language not going to resolve the case?
Is it because we didn't have the right of reentry?
Oh, wait a minute. What's the definition of an assignment, Roxy? How do we define assignment? What distinguishes the assignment from the sublease?
The assignment is when they transfer the entire interest.
Good. In this case, is the entire interest being transferred from one to the next? The answer is yes, right? Even though they call it a sublease, the entire interest in the property is being transferred. In other words, there's nothing left over, right? There's nothing for the sublessee to have. So everything goes to the assignee. Think of it in terms of the bundle of sticks, right? Rogers gave up his entire interest in the property. The defendant paid rent to Ernst, right? The defendant remained in possession for the entire time. Rogers had no interest in the land. Because Rogers retained no interest, he didn't have any right of reentry. Therefore, he has no interest in the land. It's an assignment. Everything went to Rogers. Everything left from Rogers. Rogers gave his entire interest up to Ernst. The fact that he used the word sublet is not dispositive, doesn't resolve the case. The courts look not just at the words used, but how the contract operates. And Andrew mentioned this a minute ago. People often use the wrong words, right? And you look at based on how it's operating, not the words used, right? Very good. So to summarize the case, right? You have to look, is an assignment or is it a sublease? If the entire interest has been given up, then you say it has to be an assignment, regardless of the words being used. That's right.
Is it also part of the rule that it's a sublease is for, like, thinking about the bundle of sticks, that you're giving away a lesser duration of time? Is that part of it too?
Yes. Well,
because I know it was an issue here, and
yeah.
I apologize if this is in advance of a point you're going to get to, but
no, that's fine. That's fine.
Because the original lease was only supposed to be a certain time, but the Conditt wanted it
the entire,
longer.
yeah.
And so
Good point. Yeah.
The whole re-entry, like he wasn't. If it would have been shorter than the original lease, then it would have been a sublease. Mm-hmm. But because he wanted it long, it extended it. And
yeah, everyone heard Brittany's point. This is a good point. If let's just use made-up numbers, right? The original lease was 1 year. The new lease was 2 years, right? That suggests they were going beyond the term of the original lease, and it's definitely an assignment because they were not only the 1 year there, but the 2 years full. So it's a good point, right? You have to look at the operation of the lease and not just the language. Kendra.
Well, I was going to ask along that if,
So if he gave away all of his interest, but it was like for 6 months instead of the 2 years, would it still be unassigned?
Oh, a shorter period of time, you're asking?
Yeah.
Well, I think it was a short period of time that might change the fact, because it would be a right of entry at the end of the 6-month period.
He would get it back.
Yeah, I think if it was a shorter window, that might change the outcome of the case. Here, it seems that Ernst was taking over the business, the go-kart business, and he didn't expect the other guy to get anything back. Rogers was out. Even though it says, right, Rogers remained personally liable for the faithful performance of all the terms, the court basically says that doesn't matter. We're not going to give any weight to that because he's not liable. Therefore, everything goes on to Ernst, and Rogers is out. Now, and one point, Brittany. Why is this case called Ernst v. Conditt and not Ernst v. Rogers? Right? Natalia, you want to take a stab? Why is Rogers not being involved in this case? Just we have to guess. Why are they going after Ernst and not Rogers? Do you think Rogers had a lot of money? No. I think Rogers was broke, which is why they went after Conditt. I'm sorry, they went after Ernst, who actually had some money. If I had to guess, I mean, I don't know. I'm speculating here. Brittany, your hand was up a minute ago?
Yes, two things now that you made that point.
Mhm.
So it can operate, the sublease can operate possibly two ways. One, if it's a shorter duration of the entire time of the original lease, and then also if you're not giving away all of your bundles.
There are probably a lot
you
of...
still have access to the property or something like you're just giving out a room, you're subletting a room as opposed to the whole, or if it's extending the duration of the lease.
I think that's right. I think there are factors to look at. I don't think one rule is dispositive, but if it's if the duration is less in time, that suggests there's a right of reentry, which makes it more like a sublease. If it's a longer duration, there's no right of entry, that suggests assignment. If there's nothing left for the original tenant to have, that makes it hard to sell it as a sublease.
And my second part was they talk about, I don't remember if it was this case, about the intent of the original people in it. Could that also, could the court take that into consideration, the fact that the lessor went after Ernst because went after Conditt because that's who he really thought he should
was
be
the true
going to?
The true tenant. Well, that's a good
Would
point.
the court take that into consideration? Like he didn't even bother going after Rogers because he knew that wasn't what this was.
So it could also have been a deep pockets issue, right? Which is what I was getting at before.
Yeah, Megan said that.
Yeah, my guess is Rogers had no money. He was like, I'm out. And he didn't want to waste his money as soon as someone was judging proof. That would be my guess, but Brittany raises a good point. Brittany says, the fact that they went after Ernst suggests the parties understood it to be an assignment, right? That reaffirms that it was completely delegated, notwithstanding, right? Rogers remained liable for whatever, right? They didn't even bother suing Rogers. It wasn't even part of the case. I think that was broke, if I had to guess. That's my speculation. I don't know. I haven't researched this, but my guess is the guy was broke. Yes, yeah.
What is the relationship in the assignment? Like, what is the relationship between the lessor and the lessee, not the sublessee? Is there anything left?
Okay, so the question is this, right? With an assignment, I tried to write it here, perhaps not well. You originally have a landlord and tenant, right? Or you can call it a lessor and a lessee, right? Same thing. With an assignment, the landlord stays, so the lessor is the same. But then you have the assignee, right? The lessee is out of the picture. This new person is called the assignee. In this case, it's Ernst. Make sense?
Conditt.
I'm sorry. Condom. Sorry, I said flipped it. It's been a long day. I was in Boston this morning. What? I spoke yesterday at Roger Williams Law School in Rhode Island and Vermont Law School in Vermont. I had a 5-in flight from Boston this morning. So I'm doing okay. Yeah. That's my mistake I made. I'm in good shape. Yeah, Matt.
So just kind of the difference between if I let somebody rent my apartment for a month as opposed to take over my lease so I can move on to someone.
I didn't hear the last part of what you said.
The second one was letting someone else come and take over my lease. Like this,
Well, but it has to be with your landlord's consent. If it's for the entirety, it's more like an assignment. But the landlord would have to specify what he's looking for. He wants Landlords always want subleases, more people to sue. All right, we have like 10 minutes left. Let's see the. Oh, you have a question? Was your hand up? Okay, seeing things now. Last case. Almost there. Almost there. It's almost Friday, I think. If I get protested in class, please, I know what's going on. Don't protest me. There's so much property to learn. All right, who's next? Edwin, you want to give me the facts, please, in Kendall versus Ernest Pestana, please?
So the city of Somerset rented a part of the airport
Okay.
to Urban and Janice Ernest.
Okay.
And then they in turn assigned their interest to Ernest Pestana.
Good.
And then after a while, he wanted to sublease it to Jack Kendall.
Good.
And radio horror, digital horror.
Good.
And the airport doesn't know.
Okay. Okay, very good, very good. So, first off, Edwin, this case from California, right? What's about to happen? The common law is going down the tube, right? Thank you, Julian, for interjecting. You didn't heckle me, but I'll let that one slide. It's okay. We're friends here. We're all friends here. And this is a California case, meaning the common law is about to reverse. So, Andres, was there any good reason given why the sublease should not be permitted? Was there a reason given?
No, it just says generally the contract of the lessor had like it was up to his discretion whether to approve or not approve any sublease.
Good. And that was a common law rule, right? Yeah. Okay, good. So the common law rule was that for a commercial lease, and again, this is commercial, this is not residential. Residential might be a different deal. But for a commercial lease, the landlord does not need to give a reason why he's denying a sublease. He can say, I don't want to give a sublease because I don't like this guy, or I give no reason at all, right? And this is an airplane hangar. This is an expensive commodity, right? This is not like, a one-bedroom apartment. It's a very expensive facility. So that's the common law rule. Khadijah, what is the California rule in this case? That's supposed to be the California roll, but what's the California rule? Sorry, bad joke. Good, very good, very good. Thank you. So the shift in the law in California is that you must give what's called a commercially reasonable reason, right? You have to give a justification that the court deems reasonable for why you're declining the assignment, or the sublease. You can't simply just say no, okay? And the court abandons this because they say the common law rule doesn't make sense, right? When you have a commodity like a airplane hangar, you don't really care who's there. You care if they're paying the rent. And people don't have any sort of expectation that a certain person will continue to use it. And if you notice, they have a lot of contract language. The court says, both the policy against restraint and alienation and the implied contractual duty of good faith and fair dealings. Right? These are things you learn about in contract, good faith and fair dealings. They don't exist in property law when you're selling stuff. Be simple. But the courts have wiggled it in to sales concerning leases. And when you impose a duty of good faith and fair dealing to leases, you need to give a justification for why you are denying the sublease or the assignment. Okay, so everyone with me. Kendall, let's talk about the dissent. What does the dissent say here? It's short. Oh, reliance. This is a very, very important point here, right? So let me make this point very bluntly, right, Kendall? You're a lawyer for the landlord, and he asks you, hey, do I need to give a reason why I'm denying the sublease, right? What do you tell him? You tell him no. You gave him an accurate statement of the law that you don't have to give a reason, you can deny him, that's fine. You get this appealed up to the California High Court. What's the answer now, Kendall? Are you liable for malpractice? You're a California lawyer. You gave him advice, he lost the case, he has to pay fees now to the other side. Are you looking for malpractice? Why not? Oh, it wasn't the law at the time. So I think you're right. I think Kendall's right. Okay, you're probably not liable for malpractice because the law at the time was that this was not the rule. But let me give you name. Sorry, Lucas. Let me ask you a question, Lucas. And I'll wrap class up with this one. Let's say you negotiate a lease, right? And you're trying to set the price for a lease. And the guy, the tenant says, so I really like renting this facility to Bob. I really like Bob. I want to give him a good lease. And I'll give him a reduced price because I like Bob. I trust him, right? And you say, look, that's fine. You can decline Bob assigning, meaning Bob can keep this rate. But now, is that term limiting assignments permissible without a reason? No, not now. So what this law does, and the dissent raises this point, is it basically retroactively changes thousands of leases in the state. And leases that were negotiated under one set of assumptions, that you can control assignments and control subleases, those assumptions no longer prevail. So whatever rate negotiated for one set of assumptions are gone. You may have given someone a discount because you said this is going to be for you and only you, and I can choose who else gets it. But now you have to give a reason. He can maybe assign to someone else without any justification. So this decision basically degrades the value of leases that are negotiated on the assumption that you have this control, but you have this control no longer. So whenever the California courts start reversing the common law, this is one of the exam questions we had, right? They get rid of this, the old rules. It makes things more fair, but it puts in a very awkward spot people in the past who negotiated based on the assumption that these laws would continue. Make sense? Make sense? All right, so to summarize a bit, very easy. An assignment, you convey the entire interest. A sublease, you give something less than that. The hard part is deciding what does it mean to give the entire interest. That's where all these questions usually boil down to. Anything else? Whew, I'm done. All right, I'll see you later. I am done.